This is Linda Joy Myers, and I'm the president and founder of the National Association of Memoir Writers. And we're creating a series on memoir writing to help you with your memoir. And we include myself and my colleague Jerry Waxler, who is the author of the wonderful book Memoir Revolution, and his blog has many wonderful over 400 essays that you can learn from. Jerry, want to say hello and give the name of your blog?
Yes, my blog is easiest to find if you just look for Jerry Waxler, W-A-X-L-E-R. It's called Memory Writers Network, which turns out to be hard to remember, so I just tell people to look for my name.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, and I've read many of his essays. They're very, very educational. And my colleague and author, Judy Mandel. Judy is the author of the prize-winning book, Replacement Child. And Judy, tell them where to find you and your writings on the web.
You can go to judymandel.com, and that'll lead you to it'll lead you to my blog, it'll lead you to information about my book, Replacement Child, and some information about me and other things I do.
Wonderful. And one of the things the three of us are going to do, I'm going to mention briefly, is we're going to be together in an intimate retreat on the shores of Connecticut in October. So please check out writeyourmemoirnow.com to find out more about that. So today we decided we wanted to talk with you about finding the structure for your memoir. All the people that we coach and teach and talk to about memoir struggle with the issue of structure. And so today I want to begin with you, Jerry, to talk about some of the tips that you have for memoir writers on finding their structure.
Right. Well, it's a fascinating topic because as we're looking to our own lives and our memories, we feel they're very unstructured. Memories kind of twist and turn. A memoir is very nicely structured. It's the story, which means it has a beginning, middle, and end, and a protagonist who's trying to achieve something. So the whole point of how do you find that is very particular to your own life experience, but the key is to get that protagonist starting towards some important goal. It's a fascinating challenge because a lot of times you don't really know where to start it until you're practically finished the manuscript. And that can be a little paradoxical because you're going back and forth. But it's in the end, you want to develop a structure. You want to develop a story that someone's going to read and enjoy and close with a sense of satisfaction.
Well, what I hear you saying is that people may need to write forward however they can get started and see the structure that evolves as they keep writing. Is that right?
Totally. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it emerges from the event as the events shape themselves into a narrative. You can start to see the structure emerge.
I'm sure that's quite a relief for most memoir writers because they just struggle with this idea so much.
I know. Well, it's one of those things, if you try to do it before you start, then it's going to be very mysterious, but as you go, it starts to make a lot more sense.
So we learn from the writing itself how to do this. Right. I find that very reassuring, even though I've already written a memoir, to think about it that way, and that was the way it worked for me. What I find helpful, too, is to let people know some of the choices they have for structure as they move along consciously developing a structure for their memoir. And there's a couple that I'll mention. One of them is called the frame structure. An example of this is starting, let's say, in the present and moving, then making a transition and moving into the past. And you may end up having the whole book be in the past and end then again in the present. And that would be a frame structure. A mild version of this kind of frame structure is The Glass Castle with Jeanette Walls. She doesn't do a lot at each end of her book, but she does start in the present. The whole book is chronological in the past, and she ends in her adult self in The Glass Castle. Another version of the frame structure is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. her prologue is in the now, and she leads you very quickly into her story of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and on that hike she weaves in her healing story about grieving the death of her mother and other things that were troubling her very much. And so we weave back and forth in time in a very skillful way in that book. There are non-traditional structures, there are circular structures, very poetic structures that meander a bit and are very stream of consciousness. One of them is called The Truth Book by Joy Castro, and she doesn't use chronological time, she uses sort of psychic time, psychological time to weave through her story. So those are just a few examples that I'd like to offer you. Judy, help us learn more about how to manage time in a memoir.
Well, you talked about Cheryl Strayed's book, Wild, and that's actually a very good example, I think, of when you do want to skip in time, and you might go back and forth in time. And I think what's important, I think, about that in transitions is to let something trigger that memory, whether it's something in your senses that triggers that memory back and brings you back. A smell can do that, or something you're doing, or a certain kind of light at the end of the day might remind you of some instance that is a memory that brings you back. So I think the transitions is something to be carefully looked at as you're doing that, so you don't lose the reader, so they follow you through it.
Oh, those are good suggestions. And I think it's helpful for memoir writers to think of transitions in time. We all know where we are and when we're there because we remember it. But then eventually, when you're ready to think about your reader, to really make sure that you're guiding your reader through those transitions. And then the use of sensual detail, Judy, is so important, isn't it, in bringing a story alive?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the other part of that is to give some description when you're doing that, so that people know where you are at the time, right. So that you're not, especially if there's dialogue and you want to place the person where they're saying it from. That brings a lot of reality to it for the reader too.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me today to offer these tips to memoir writers. And we invite you to visit the National Association of Memoir Writers at namw.org and find out what's going on. We have free programs every month. We have a free telesummit coming up in May of 2014 and another in November of 2014. These are all free events. So have a great day, Judy and Jerry. And the slogan for the National Association of Memoir Writers is "Be brave, write your story." Have a great day.
Thank you.